I want you to feel better. It's 7 degrees and snowing here.
Ooh. Yeah, so Marshall lives up. All right. And so who went to this conference? We'll see later. This will be the test. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then there was Layla, but Layla is currently in Turkey, so she could not attend. All right. So, World Conference. Who's ever been to a World Conference of Friendship Force International? Come on, little thing, you can do it. Ever. Oh, ever. Come on. All right. So we all know this, right? So organizations have missions, and this is our mission. All right. So these things have been going on since 19. Hold on a second. These things have been going on. These conferences have been going on since 1999. And you'll notice Dallas is listed in red. So in 2002, right after Paul and I joined, Friendship Force International had their conference here at the Hilton Lincoln Center, right over there by the gallery. And so there were, who was involved with that? Who's still here that was involved in that? Right. So we did, and you know, we had, I don't know how many people, a lot of people that showed up at that conference. But you can see it's been all over the place. What they do is they'll do it in North America, then they'll do it in Europe, and then they'll do it in Asia. So where the little stars are, that's where they've held conferences. They even did one in Morocco. Did anybody go to the Morocco conference? So Jim went. So there's no club in Morocco, but they did it. Just like for this conference, there's no club in Dubrovnik or in Croatia, but we'll talk about that. So they did that. So they've been all over the place. And I've been to all of the ones in the United States, except for whatever that is. Yeah. So when was Madison? Back in 2000. That was before my time. But I've been to a bunch of these. I went to the one in Atlanta, DC, New Orleans, Vancouver, and the last one was 4 years ago in Boulder, Colorado. And that was a very different conference, but it was a lot of fun. They're all a lot of fun. All right, notice my t-shirt, notice my shirt, 2015. And so just like a lot of things, you know, you can, yeah. Hey, I still fit in, you know? So this was one of the days at the conference, and I've got all, and most of these little pins have either come from journeys or come from conferences. So there's that history. All right, so 2023 Dubrovnik. Wow, we heard about it. It was like, let's go. Why not? Haven't been to a conference. We haven't been to a conference in 4 years. So where's Croatia? Well, here's Italy. Here's Croatia, and Dubrovnik is way down here. So it's like at the end of it. And as you know, all of this used to be Yugoslavia, and then it got split up into various pieces. So we were way down here. And we were actually in a little town called Malini, which is just south of Dubrovnik. So who's been to Dubrovnik before? All right, so you've probably seen stuff like this, okay? So it's an old city. I don't know, I never did it here, but it probably goes back to like Roman times or something like that. And this whole area right here is maybe a half a mile across. It's not very big. It's really tiny. Now the rest of the city goes up north, maybe a couple of miles. Paul and I stayed a couple of days before the conference on the other end of town. And so we had to take a bus or take a taxi down to the old town and did stuff and then went back up there. So it was really interesting. And most of these photos I took, some other people I've got from, and this one, so they had an app that people could post photos to, and this was, I don't know who took it, but this was a picture on the south end of town on the little wharf area. And I was like, oh, and I was like, oh, so that's where they got the logo. You know, I kept seeing this logo. I was like, okay, yeah, Rose Window. I was like, oh, so There must be something about the block. Now, this is where we actually work. This is the hotel right here, the Sheraton Hotel, and this is the little town of Malini, and there's a bay that goes along here for about a mile. And our hotel, they, you know, so Friendship Force International works with somebody to line up the locations and all that stuff. So it was just like, sure, just tell me where we need to go. And then if they didn't have room here, they had some apartments in this area that people could stay at. I didn't meet anybody. Did anybody meet anybody that stayed at any place else besides the conference hotel? But there were some other hotels that people could get to. And that's what it looks like, very modern looking. I don't know if this is a Soviet era or what, but it was a beautiful hotel. This is the front of the hotel here on the left and the pool and the rooms on the right. Really nice place. And that's what it looked like from the hotel. So it's like, could be worse, right? It was really nice. And so here's the little walking path. I walked all the way down to some areas over here. And then you could take a water taxi from here up to Dubrovnik, which is about 2 miles, or you could take it to some of the islands or some of the other little towns and stuff. So we could go out and walking. There were a lot of people, even though it was, when did we go? September, 1st of October. There were a lot of Europeans out on the beach, a lot of folks out there. So it's a pretty touristy town, not only for international people, but for a lot of Croatians I saw. So, you know, I don't get up early, but this is at 6:30 in the morning when I got up. So that's what we got to see in the morning and in the afternoon from our room. So, man, this is great. I love it. All right. So how many people showed up? So this was a kind of a medium-sized conference. It wasn't real large. When we met in like Washington, D.C. and Atlanta and New Orleans, we had like close to 600 people. When we were in Boulder, we had around 350 or 4. So we had 300 people plus, including almost all the staff, all the FFI staff. There's about 13, 15 people. So they were there. 25 different countries, clubs from 25 different countries came. And Canada had the next most, Japan, Hawaii, and there were. So what they do, and you'll see it in a second, at one point they go, all right, and they read off all the names of all the clubs that are there, and people stand up, yay. And so when they got to the United States, which was probably like, it's the last, you know, half the crowd stood up because there were 171 of us from all over the place. So that was pretty amazing. So it gets you an idea of who's participating, who's not participating. So there were a lot of Americans, United States of Americans. Okay. All right. So one of the things, so there's a lot of facts and stuff, but it's really about the people. All right. And I can't remember if this is yours, Barb, or if this is Pat's. I can't remember. I think these two ladies were from the country of Georgia. I don't know who this lady is, but somebody gave me this picture and said here. So she's from Washington, and here are these two young women. So there's some in some clubs there's younger people that are showing up. Okay. And then
You want me to say something?
yes. So I'm pointing at you.
Who we have here, that is the president of Friendship Force. That's the president of Friendship Force Tokyo and her husband. And about 10 years ago, we were ambassadors and stayed in their homes in Tokyo. And we've seen them ever since, whenever we go to conferences. And in Boulder, they showed up with a beautiful presentation box with 4 different types of psyche in it. And so every time we show up, we communicate, you're going to be at conference. And so what I was thinking that we have a connection in Tokyo. The gentleman had been the president, and then the wife took over from him. So it's these friendships that you build up from around the world. Technology.
All right. So this is the first day. Everybody's checking in, meeting friends, and all that type of stuff. And here's who went. So this was Patty and her daughter. This is Patty and her daughter. They had a room And so she said, hey, let's all get together. So this is us in front of the Adriatic.
Really nice.
Yeah, and you'll notice there's my other 2013 conference shirt. So they, they didn't have any merch this year, but if they did, I would have bought a shirt. So I've got, that's from New Orleans. So that's, those are, and Pat, where's Pat? Pat and Lou, who's not here, but it's the first time they've ever been to a Friendship Force International Conference. So I'm gonna ask Pat later on what her thoughts are. But all of us everybody else has been to many of these conferences. All right, so we get together and they say, all right, Monday night, let's all get together. And so this is the first time that you really get to see how many people are here. So we all crammed into this bar. This is Jeremy Schnook. He is our president. He's the president of the organization. And this is Christiane Beaupre. She was the board chair. She's now stepped down. And this lady over here, Donna Simic, is now the chair of the board. And so they, hey, welcome. Hope we have a great time. Blah, blah, nothing super duper. But you get to see that there's a lot of people here. And in fact, there's Patty and I think that's Pat. So there's all these people and you start seeing these faces of people from all over the world. And it's like, yeah, there's Barb. Yeah.
And Lila next to it.
Could be. So it's like, and it was open bar. So we got our money's worth out of the conference fee, that's for sure, right? So we did that. And then people went off and did stuff, and then the next day started. Now, this one was unusual. And I think, did anybody go to what's that place in England?
Manchester.
Manchester. Did anybody go to Manchester? Did they do excursions in Manchester during the conference?
Yes, they did.
Okay, so this one is different. The ones in the United States that I've been to, they haven't done a lot of excursions, daily trips out. But this one they did. So in the morning, you had the opportunity to go off and do something in the area. And then in the afternoon, we did, quote, conference, right? So we all get together about 1 o'clock. And here's the agenda. This is Purina, J's or Y's. I learned that. And so there used to be a club in Zagreb, Croatia, which is way up in the top part. It's the capital city. And at some point in time, there weren't enough people. But she has kept in contact with people. And I think Mary knows her from conferences and visits and stuff like that. So she was one of the ones that went to FFI and said, hey, why don't you come to Croatia? So she did some work to do that. So here's Sandy and Roger with her. Here's Pat. And I don't know what you all are doing, scanning photos with the app or something like that. So you got to meet the host. And I'll show you in a little bit. We've got they brought some folk dancers, a singing group, introduced everybody, and then they had a couple of speakers. So we got, hey, great, fantastic, we're gonna have a great week. And then Purina welcomed us to Croatia and talked about Croatia. They showed us a little bit, like I said, of the dancers and the singers. Here's everybody. So it was a pretty decent sized ballroom, and there were like 300 people. And there's Simone. Yeah. So this is when you really got to see everybody. All right. And then, so they gave Purina, so every host person or host city that's doing the conference gets a cup. So this is what this is. And again, Jeremy and Christiane. And then people stand up and yay, Canada, yay, Indonesia, yay. And in fact, there's Patty and her sister, her daughter over there. People from Taiwan, people from Thailand. Some clubs only sent one person, some countries only sent, and then US sent 150. So again, you start to, oh, hey, I remember you from the last time. And then here I am after the opening session. So I saw this lady, and I went, I know you. You're Teresina, right? She said, yeah. So she, after the conference, where was it? In New Orleans. After the conference in New Orleans, they did homestays. And so Teresina, and I don't know if it was Emily or some other woman, stayed with the Bahanases, and another woman stayed with us for a couple of days after the conference. So I was like, oh, I remember you. So I got to meet with her, and then this lady is Simone Lanzoni. She's like Italian Brazilian, and Paula got to meet her and talk with her. And then who went to New Jersey? Who went to Southern New Jersey? Okay, so this is one of the ladies that we went to met. It's when we went out to the house out in Maryland for lunch after we went to the gardens. So, hey, I know you too. So we got to visit and chat and see how everything was going and stuff like that. And then Christian talked about a little bit about the board and what's going on. So, and then they did a couple of neat sessions. So this woman, Yelica, and I'm not even trying the second name, she was dressed up like a royal regal type person, and she gave us a really nice history of Yugoslavia and of Croatia. What had happened, who did what, where did these people come from, why it was an important port, all this type of stuff. And she did this really great presentation. So she talked about that. And at first, you know, she came out and it was what? And then she got into it. So it was a really good presentation. Hold on just a second. Let me, before I get to the dancers, we're going to do another drawing. Ready? All right, here we go. Come up here. You drew you won the last one. All right, we got last three numbers.
Last three numbers, 152. Oh.
152.
152.
Mary Jane. Mary Jane. Give this to her.
You have 8 minutes.
It's all right. So here we go with the dancers. Hold on a second. Let me double check something here. This was the kind of sedate one. And here's the guy over here playing the instrument. I don't know. I didn't get to ask them what it was, but it's very simple. A little spinning. And these were all people, I would say, like in their 20s, maybe early 30s. Their outfits were great. Look at the guys, the backs of the guys' outfits. They're all different. The women's clothes look very similar. These are all Croatian from the local area. So Karina and her group lined up a couple of activities. And they went back to their simple steps. I love it. Watch it. So that was one of them. Let me make sure. Get a little bit more sound up here, maybe a little. Okay. Now this is their last one. didn't get a chance to- You know, kind of. The history of the dance or the dance style and stuff like that, but you know, they came out, they did stuff. And then after them, some guys came out, so a group came out saying, Barb's got a video, if you want to look at it, you can look at it later, but I don't have that on here. So we got a little bit of history and a little bit of culture about what was going on in that part of the world. The group was Tlapa Kase, I guess, so we'll check those out later. And then there was a couple more. A woman talked about she started a company in Croatia. And when people come to Croatia to explore the area, one of the things that she does is she sets up. So you all know at White Rock Lake, we have the second Saturday cleanup. So this lady does cleanup. So people come in, they explicitly book her tours. And not only do they go and swim and snorkel or whatever, they go and pull plastics out of the water. So she's been doing it for like 8 years. And then she also did a talk about some of the species and the habitats around the coast and stuff like it. And then this woman, Antonia, she did it was one of the other afternoon workshops. She talked about the clothing that the women and some of the men wear there. And her outfit right here, I'll show you in a second. She raises silkworms at her house. She got into this about 8-10 years ago. She decided to do this. She grows them. She gets the wool. She talked about the whole process of how she collects the threads and how they dye it. And then they make these doodads, these, I don't know what they're called, placards, and they sew it onto a shirt. So the whole shirt is not silk. It's just the thing right there. And then she went and talked to the people who made these things. So she found out that if it's got a certain kind of design, it means a certain thing. It means you're from a particular village or from a particular language, a family, or how many kids you've got, or how many times you've been married. All these different things. So she got that historical aspect, cultural aspect of it. And then because she is a weaver herself, then she got into analyzing how these things are made. And I don't know anything about weaving, but there's even stitches and odd stitches. And certain things are even stitches and certain things are odd stitches. And all the stuff that are even stitches meant one thing and all the things that are odd. And, she would go and ask the people, well, why do you do that? Oh, that's just the way I've been doing it for, that's the way my mother and my grandmother taught me. But there's not only the cultural aspect, but there's the physical aspect of it. So she talked about her clothes and her kids and all the stuff that she did. It was a very, very interesting talk. So we got a little bit more information.
Did she do the design on?
Yeah, that's her design. And she says, I'm sorry, I'm a little fake today. This says I've got 4 kids and I really don't have 3 kids or something. So that was.
Something about how they kept those silkworms alive. Was it during the war or the cold? They put them in.
Oh yeah, as they're hatching or whatever, they put them in a silk handkerchief, and then the women put them right over their breast or their chest or something like that to keep the worms warm so they don't die. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, so it's like, oh, so that's what they do in Croatia, At least some people. And then here is, I don't know, what do you call a sub lieutenant, a sub ensign in the Army, I mean, in the Navy, a crewman. There's crewman Roger getting ready to join the galleon to go off and fight for Croatia. Well, one of the things that they did was 2 nights. One night they did a dinner cruise on this galleon, and then the next night it was just wine and drinks and stuff. And so they came all the way up to the northern end of Dubrovnik, where we were staying and then I don't know, did you all go to downtown? Is that where they took it, to Old Town? So that it went down around the coastline to downtown and then, or to Old Town, and you all got up there and then bus back. So now Roger is a seaman, hardy seaman. All right, so that was the first thing. So like, wow, okay, so this is what Croatia is like. And then I think that night was when we went to Patty's apartment or hotel room and visited and stuff like that. And then the next day I was like, okay, so now we did all that. Now let's do workshops. Let's get down to business. And so there were a lot of workshops. They had 4 separate sessions, and in each session they had 3 or 4 different workshops going on. And here are the titles. And the 3 that I'm going to highlight here is a little bit on the strategic planning. There was a talk with the board of directors, a woman, one of the FFI staff, Emily Nogueira from Brazil. She talked about various apps. I'll do a little bit about that. But they did, so it was a mix. It was a mix about running clubs, how to expand your clubs, how journeys work. I'm on the technology advisory group. So we had a session where people came in and I asked Jeremy about what's going on with the website and the systems and all that. And they did some stuff about social media and apps. So it was a good mix of workshops, different topics. Some of them were led by FFI staff. Some of them were led by FFI members from around the world. So it was a real good mix of what was going on. All right. So back in January or February last year, FFI started a strategic planning process. They want to look at what they need to be doing for the next 5 to 10 years. So we had a couple of workshops on that. So Sam, would you like to talk about that, please?
Yeah. Well, I think before we can really go into the future, I'll tell you a couple of things that Jeremy said. And he said that really during COVID, we did pretty well as an international organization. Pointed out that 1/3 of all businesses in the world closed during COVID. Now, our staff went cut in half. Our budget was cut in half. I'm referring to Friendship Force International. They were virtual, but they were ahead of the curve because they had gone virtual several years before. Because it is an international organization, they wanted to make it more international with the staff being stationed throughout the globe. So they were actually kind of ready for COVID, though they didn't know they were. We went through our strengths, our weaknesses, and some of the future things that they're looking at. One of the things that's more of a focus on 50s and 60s, because one of the major problems throughout all the clubs is aging out. And we can see that here in our own club. So there is this focus of let's get newer people in. And that's something we've been working on, but the new head of the board out of Boston is in that age group, in the 50-60 age group. And she shared with me some information about their journey that they had taken to New Zealand. And she showed me a picture of one of the ambassadors. He was 18 months old and he had his badge, but there is a focus on families, even looking at universities, maybe starting even a sub-club focus where they're looking at college students, looking at doing different types of journeys. Well, more of a mix of a homestay and a hotel, looking at doing things that would attract younger people, canoeing, bicycling, mountain climbing, as well as keeping up our base, which we are very representative. Take a look at our room today. That there are lots of good things going on. They're looking at maybe more service trips, We've done some of those in the past, but looking at doing more, looking at relationships with clubs like Rotary, Sister Cities, and OLLI, Ultra Lifelong Learning Institutes. As I said, different links, looking at maybe better marketing, pointing out the fact of Jimmy Carter's and Rosalind Carter's involvement, particularly during maybe the first 20 years of the organization, and how we were nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize in 1992. How to get ourselves out there, how we will change, keep the good, but also bring in more. And I think that was the focus, that if we are going to grow and become a great force in the years ahead, we have to do what organizations do. If you want to stay vibrant and alive, whatever made you will destroy you if you don't change. So that's the focus. It was a really good look at where we have been and where we're going. And we've got a bright future. It's going to look a little different, but there's going to be enough of similarity that we'll all still feel at home.
And if you want any more information at dinner, just say hi and we'll talk about it.
So here's somebody, you all recognize her. This is Judy from Des Moines, right? No, Cedar Rapids. So she was there. So there were, and this was a very interactive workshop. The two planning sessions, the rest of them were kind of like, somebody was doing presenting, but this one was a really interesting interactive. There's most of your board, the board of directors of Friendship Force, and they're from all over the world. For a long time, there was mostly United States citizens. Now they've got people from Japan, people from China, people from Europe, here, there, Australia, New Zealand, England. So I didn't go to that one, so I didn't hear what was going on, but they, people could ask anything you wanted to ask. And then, like I said, Emily did a program on apps. She talked about the various apps. So the first thing she said was, okay, so what are all these apps? And everybody knew the top line, but not everybody knew the bottom line. So these were things that you could use in your own life, but also when you do a journey, how you can communicate with other people on your journey, the people in the hosting club. This one, I think, was like a Foursquare to help you do some planning, what you need to pack, if you want to do that, checking flights, transportation. And then Pat Moreno found one called Visit a City. I'd never heard of it before. So we need to send this to FFI and say, hey, check this one out. And it's a deal, it's kind of like an online guide, and she used it. I'll let her talk about that in a bit, but there's lots of different things that we can do now that you can do on the internet and that you can also do on your phone to help you in travels and in journeys. All right, one more drawing. Here we go. All right, who won that last one? Mary Jane. So Mary Jane, you get the draw. All right. Is last three numbers.
Right? Okay.
1, 4,
9.
149. Here you go. 23%. We're not sorry. All right. All right, so we've had the first day of a lot of culture and a lot of information. Second day, a lot of talking and learning and visiting and stuff like that. In between the workshops, we got to visit a little bit. And then on Thursday, again, we had stuff going on during the morning. You could go off and do here, there, and everywhere, which we're going to talk. And then, so we were free until like 6 o'clock. So you had all day to go do stuff or visit with people or go on your own, stuff like that. And then party time. All right. So one of the things that they've done in the past is they've, I guess, honored a person who they deem is like very friendly. And so this guy, Rajiv, did you meet him? I know you got a picture of him. I don't know if you've met him. But this is a guy from India. So he traveled all the way from India, and FFI staff throughout the week were like checking people out and seeing what's going on. And so he got friendliest delegate. And then they also honored the club that traveled the farthest to come to the conference. And it turned out it was the people from San Diego. Well, you know, so I guess that's a long way to go to Croatia as opposed to Indonesia. So they did that, you know, they did some of that. They introduced, they don't have a site yet for the next World Conference, but they said, hey, get ready, you know, we're going to hand it off to somebody. And Debbie Powell is a longtime FFI staffer. She is now in charge of doing all these different conferences. So the North American conference that's going to happen in October, she's involved in doing that stuff. And then we had the big party. Here's your FFI staff. There's the new board. She's not an employee, but she's a volunteer. Donna Simek, Jeremy. I think that's Kirsten Hogan from Germany. This is Kimberly Fraser. So she's the one that heads up all the journey matching. This is Debbie Powell, and I didn't get a chance to. This is Debbie Leahy from New Zealand, and I don't know who this is, but that's some of our staff. They're all having I don't know what they're drinking, probably some Croatian jet fuel or something. I don't know. And then, you know, here's a bunch of folks. Is that the guy from Japan?
Yes.
It's the guy from Japan. There's Kirina and a bunch of, so, you know, there were a few younger folks there. And then they had a band that was okay, I'll say. But everybody got up and danced and had a good time, you know. And then, but like I said, a lot of what this is about people. So these are all of us. This is our selfies. All right. So these are pictures from Pat. Everybody's all duded up. There's Layla in the middle. There's pictures of Barb with Judy. And so who are these people? Are they from Austin? Right, Carol. Yeah. Okay. So I couldn't tell if you were giving a chokehold or a really big bear hug or something. Yeah. So she went on one of the pre-tour excursions. There's Marie from Sarasota and some other folks. There's me and Marie and Barb. And then here's a whole bunch of Sandy and other folks, people from Long Island. So one of the things we did is I went and talked to the people of Long Island, and I've got their information. So we'll get to go to Long Island, you know, or maybe we'll host them. So that's the other thing that happens during these conferences. Yeah, there's a lady from Indonesia, the guy from India. So Valeria, did you know her? Had you all been to Cape Town before, or you just met her?
We've been to Cape Town, but I didn't meet her.
Yeah, so now you meet new people, okay? And then again, Donna Simek, you want to say something about Donna?
I've already said.
Okay.
She's
Yeah, so she's from Boston. She's from the Boston Club. And so Sandy came up to me at one point. She says, hey, have you met the new incoming board? And I said, no, not yet. She goes, oh. And then about 30 minutes later, this lady comes up and she goes, I need to meet you. Oh. So Sandy's a big networker. So, you know, it's nice to know who all these people are so that when we have questions or comments or concerns, we can say, hey, Donna, what's going on? When you put a face or a handshake to somebody, then it personalizes it.
I do want to just say that it seems like to me that almost everybody I met at that conference, you know, the questions are, hello, who are you, who are you? And I say, I'm Sandy Kaiser, I'm from Dallas. Oh, that's where Edward's from.
Yeah, you know, because that's the thing is you know, just meet people. Nothing else. You know? All right. So here I am with Teresina and Ilma from Brazil, and this is Lucy Lenore. So I met somebody else, and I said, "Oh, you're from Southern New Jersey." I went to Southern New Jersey. Is Lucy here? Oh yeah, she's right over there. So I got to visit with them. There's Paula and me. So these 5 ladies are all from the New Jersey Club. So we got to visit. I'm not sure what this is, but that's something that the lady had. I don't know. I think I don't know if it's anything from New Jersey or what. So this was during the ball, the gala ball. So we all got to visit. And you get to see your friends and stuff like that. And during the excursions, we did that as well. So like I said, this was something that was kind of different. So they did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 during those days, those mornings, Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, you could go on one of these excursions. And they were, reasonably priced to a little expensive, but not outrageously expensive. I think Paul and I went the wine tour, the Hell Yes Sack, again, the J's are wise, and it was like maybe $120, but we went on a bus, we went to 3 different places, headland, so it was a pretty decent price, So the ones that in bold are the ones that we're going to talk about. This island cleanup, the lady who did the talk, a whole bunch of people went out and did picking up plastic out of the ocean. Kavtat was the city that was the town that was just south of Malini, and it's in the Konavli Valley. I guess that's how you pronounce it. So a bunch of people went there. This is how many people went on those various excursions, and they did some of these multiple times. So it wasn't all 93 people on one time. So they went, I think, different times. So Sandy's going to talk about cooking. Barb's going to talk about walking tour, and either me or Pat will talk about, or Paul will talk about the wine tour. All right. So this was really fun. And then you got depending on the group, you got to visit with people from here, there, and everywhere. Again. All right, Sandy.
Okay.
Now, I will say that cooking classes is one of my favorite things to do when we're traveling. But this was probably the best one that I ever did. We were picked up at the hotel. We were taken along the coastline, got to see the beautiful Dalmatian coastline. We were taken to the botanical garden, where we had a tour of the botanical garden. And the reason being that to get to where the cooking class was actually attached to the botanical garden. We were met by our hostess, who actually was a TV personality who did cooking classes on TV, and her specialty being traditional Croatian cooking. So it was the entry in to the gardens, into her home, that they had owned this property for over 100 years. We were visiting really in her home. All of the cooking was done outside. And we had our table and kitchen. And it's not your plug in the natural gas kind of kitchen. This was all done with firewood. And the kitchen had a canopy of grapevines, with grapes actually growing.
So that's what's up on the screen now.
What? Okay, all right. So as you can see how traditional everything was, the menu, we made local bread, which we baked in an outside oven. And we also made a fish, it was a fish dinner, which they had caught this morning at their dock at the foot of their property. Almost everything that we used was made on their property, their wines, their olive oils, the cheese, the tomatoes. So, and as we cooked each of these, she went into how they made them, how long the family had been making them. So it was a very close-knit little group. But can you imagine how quaint and lovely that was? And not to mention, the food was excellent. And she just generated this heart. As she talked about her grandmother had taught her all of this. And that the reason she loved the place, what she did, is that she wanted her grandmother's recipes to be passed on. So it was a really special experience and very, very appropriate for Friendship Force.
All right, hold on a second. For some reason, it's not playing through up there.
best cooking
Yeah, for
demonstration
some
I've
reason
ever
it's
been
not going
to.
up.
Oh, thank you very much.
Just talking a little bit about, you said, oh, you're a
My
great
son,
cook or something like that. And then
promised
she's
me
talking
that,
about how
he helped me this morning. But
her family was supposed to come and help her
tonight,
this day,
last night they
but
have
the night before they had a
some
party for one of the
celebration for the
kids, and so
birthday.
nobody showed up. So she had to do all the
He
work.
called me in the 9 o'clock.
Bed headache.
Did you need me? And I said no, because my cooking show starts in 7 o'clock in the morning, not when the guest is coming. It's too late for me. You know, before you must prepare the table.
Like 45 minutes going and coming, another 15 walking to the garden way, and then the rest was actually the cooking. Actually, there was only 12 of us. So you really were able to have hands-on, and I got to help with actually the cooking of the fish, which had been caught that morning. And they did nothing except open the fish up, put a little olive oil and rosemary, and cook it on the open fire.
Well, I'm up next, and I'm going to briefly talk about the walking tour we did at the Brother. Now, they had, I think, 2 or 3 different walking tours. Same walking tour, just different groups of people, different times of day. So I went in the morning on the first day, before the first, after the opening session, but before we got started with the conference. So, excuse me, I only have a few slides, but it's an absolutely breathtaking, it's a good way to describe it, city. Because it's totally enclosed by walls. And the original castle, etc., which is more down towards the end here, was started in Roman times. And that whole area on the Adriatic was trampled by many different peoples over the years. So it started with the Greeks and the Romans and various, many different types of groups of people over the years until we ended up to where we are now. But many of these buildings were here that you see here started in the 1300s and even before that. And a lot of this added is more in the like the 1500s, 1600s. So, and behind here on the left are apartments and things. So a lot of people still live in the old town. They just built all around the current, the standing buildings. So there's a lot of people in the town. So this is a cathedral, and this, I'm gonna show you 3 pictures of the monastery. This is a Franciscan monastery. It was started in the 1300s. But the real cool part of it, I'll flip to the next one, is they have, this is it, on the left is the inside of the monastery, because you have the walkway. And it's square, this is just one side, but they had a pharmacy. And the pharmacy opened in 1311, and it is still running today. So this is on the right-hand side is what the pharmacy looked like maybe in the 1500s, 1600s. But they still sell a lot of the original remedies and things. And they had a little, pardon?
There's the used by thing.
Yeah, probably about 5 centuries ago. So, and then they had a museum in there too. It was just incredibly interesting to wander around and see everything that they had there. And then another thing, I went to, this is part of the walking tour, but Marie and I went back. We took the water taxi. Yeah, we have a difference in height in our club. We took the water taxi back one day, but this is one of the buildings that I believe is in the Game of Thrones. It was many of these buildings were, and somebody else is gonna be talking about that, so I don't wanna say anything. But I found it's like a palace type of thing, but this is the interior. So the exterior, the interior, and while I was standing there listening to the guy, I saw this little staircase and I looked up and I thought, wow, that's really interesting. So after the guy left, I walked up here. It was okay. Yeah, flip to the next one.
Did it look out to the little port wharf thingy?
No, not this side. It was in a small museum. And it was really interesting because they had these little sedan chairs. I've seen them in books, I've seen them in movies. I have never, in all the museums and things I've been to, seen an actual sedan chair. So there were two of them here. So I had to take a picture of it. And then they had chainmail. And I've seen plenty of it in movies, but I really haven't seen, it's such a good looking piece as they had here. But it's very fun, this piece was very finely made. And I don't know how sturdy it would be, but it looked really good. And I can't imagine how old it was. And then this is a piece of armor on the right. And you can see me in the glass. I did this on purpose because I'm 5'10", and I realize that men back in the 13 and 1400s were a lot shorter than me. But you can see how much smaller, and I'm standing away from that glass. So if you put me next to that piece of armor, it's like this big. So, and you think of the swords and the things that those guys swung, they were some mean dudes. So I just thought this was a really interesting part of the walking tour. I think that's, oh, yeah, and this is a view of where the water taxis come in to the right. So this is at sunset, yeah, right there. So this is what you see, and it's just incredibly beautiful city. I highly recommend if you get a chance to go, either along, do one of the cruises along the Adriatic, or I did a land tour. It's a beautiful part of the world, very much like old Italy, and very easy to get around, and the people are extremely friendly. Okay, thank you. Oh, you need to lower it again.
Oh, that's good. Right, so when we were looking at, and over here is my badge and my pins, and also the conference calendar or the conference catalog. So when we got the information, here's this tour, walking tour, this tour, that tour, that tour. And it's like, well, I like wine. So I said, hey, Paul, you want to go on a wine tour? She goes, yeah. So we went to Peljušac. Took me a while to learn that. It's not Peljušac, but Peljušac. And then we were going to have a lunch. So here's the hotel lobby and all the people getting ready to go on an excursion for the day. These are both staff members of FFI, and they're pointing people in the right direction. And then we all get on the bus, and there were almost 40 of us on this tour. And so we started way down here in Molini, and we went all the way up this coast, like an hour and a half to get to this island, or actually it's a peninsula. This is the Peljušac Peninsula, and we just explored about that much. The island actually goes to way over here. It's like a really long island or peninsula. So we got to see, the coastline. These are all oyster beds. So there was an excursion. You could go do oyster bed stuff. I don't know anybody that did, but so you could learn about that. And then from the roadway, you could see out to the islands that are all along through here. So I got to see, and to me, I've never seen land like this before. I've been to a bunch of coastlines, but I've never seen it. So it was just really, really nice, really amazing. And little towns all up and down. So they get us up to once we get onto the island, we see this big castle and we see these walls, and somebody says, hey, so what's the deal with these walls? Here we are on a peninsula. Well, one of the things that they did on this peninsula is they made salt. way back. They had these big fields and we went by, there was a big field where they dried the seawater and got the salt, and salt was really valuable. And so the guide said, well, you know, if you got something that's really valuable, you want to put a wall up so people don't get it. So this wall is from, I don't know, 1500s or something like that, and it goes all the way around this area. So we got to see a little more of that area. Then we went to the first winery. All the wineries we went to were very small, 30 to 50,000 cases a year, not very much. You know, there was a few, you could see some of the vineyards out there, but then they would talk about the various wines and we could sample whatever we want. And here's a bunch of us. There's Patty, I think that's your daughter, right? And there's Pat, there's Paula. And again, you know, you got to visit over a glass of wine with people from here, there, and everywhere. So we went to one winery, then we went to another winery, and this one was I believe was an organic winery. So he talked about the deal, and we got to go in to see all the tanks and all that, and then got a sample of wine. And this was where we were out looking over the valley. So here's Simone again from Brazil, some other folks. One of the things that they did in this conference is like I said, they had this app, and so you could take pictures and post it and put little things on it. So I don't know who took that picture, but there's people having wine. And we had snacks, and we got to, again, visit with people from, I think these people were from the United States. She's from Brazil. And then we went to the third winery, and they didn't really talk much about the wines. We didn't get to go into the cellars and stuff like that, but they made us lunch. And so they made us pekka lunch. And I was like, well, what's pekka? Well, I found out pekka means like an oven or to a hearth or something like that. So it's a style of cooking. So what they do is they take, this is like a big dome of metal. And so they prepare the food in this big metal pan. And we had lamb and veal, and then potatoes and carrots and onions and olives and all that stuff. So they make these big dishes, and then they put one of these metal things on top of it. And then they put this ring around it. And these are all coals from the fire. And so it's convection from the top. And it sat there for, I don't know, 6 hours, 5 hours, something like that. So by the time we got there, it was ready. So it's not like a microwave. And there was a guy that was over there tending it, making sure everything was good and all that type of stuff, while the wine owners were giving us a little bit of talk. And then we were in two different areas. And so this was our lunch. And they had appetizers. If you go any place in Croatia, it's cheese and ham and olives and crackers or bread or something like that, and then lunch and wine, of course, you know. So we got to have a nice lunch. All right, so anything you want to say about the wine tour, Pat?
And I don't really like lamb or veal, but I ate that lunch like there's no tomorrow.
Paula, anything you want to say?